It's a Bespin guard.
Halt, strangers. Take us to Lando Calrissian. Follow me.
From Kenner's Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back collection. Action figures each sold separately.
I'm Lando. Who's there? Han Solo on a mission with Rebel Soldier. What's your mission? We're fighting the Empire, and we need your help.
Han Solo, Rebel Soldier, Lando Calrissian, and Bespin Guard, each sold separately. From Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back collection. New from Kenner.
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to GeekFest Rants. My name is Carlos Perona, and I have James joining me. Say hi, James.
Hello, hello.
Well, we are returning to a series that we started quite a bit ago. At the rate we're going, this is going to last quite a long time. This is the 31-back show, Star Wars action figures, Kenner specifically. We are taking them wave by wave and kind of giving you guys kind of like the highlights of how these waves are different from each other, the history behind them, how we personally, discovered them and because they are part of our collection.
Yeah.
And we are once again continuing, at least from my end, just like we've done in the past. We're picking our pictures that I'm looking at, and then from here, from my desk, I can actually see my figures, right in front of me over there. And I'm using the Mark Bellomo book, which is the same one we used before. This is called The Ultimate Guide to Vintage Star Wars Action Figures, and we once again remind you there are other books available out there. They're great reference material. They're not necessarily the Bible. If you want the Bible of vintage figures, there's a book called the Kellerman book. And
we can't afford it.
Neither of us can afford it, and I'm always hoping that I'm going to go to some flea market and find it for like $10 or something. But it goes on eBay on sale from anywhere from a few $100s to like $1,000. It's ridiculous. I wish somebody would digitize the damn book so I can just go and download it or something. But I don't know. I just don't understand. I don't want to get into it. Every time we do this show, I get all frustrated. Then I go to eBay and I get even more frustrated because every time I check, the prices go up. So we stick to the books that we can afford. Like I said, this Ultimate Guide to Star Wars is a cool reference guide. It's not the best. And there's also a couple of Steven Sansweet ones that he put out in the past that are also great reference material because not only do you get to see pictures of the figures, some of these books also you might see pictures of the card backs and the front of the card back and the back of the card back. So that's kind of cool. So we finished the last time we talked with Star Wars, both waves of Star Wars figures, and at the end of it they threw in the bonus secret or mail away special figure that was Boba Fett as a tease, I guess, to what was coming down the line with Empire. Now, that was a figure we mentioned before that was a mail away. You send in your proofs of purchase, you get your free figure, and then eventually they actually carded that figure. So we are not going to basically talk about Boba Fett, even though he is an Empire figure, but he was released earlier. The first figure we're going to talk about today for this Empire Strikes Back line, the 31 backs, because now we're up to 31 figures if you look at the back of the card, is Bossk. Now, James, tell me what you remember about Bossk. Was it in the store or was it somewhere else?
Well, he was a secret action figure about to be released, and nobody really knew who he was yet. You just knew this name. And, of course, you get 4 or 5 proof of purchases at the time.
Yeah, that's usually how they
mail
went.
them away, of course, and in a few weeks, God willing, you would get your action figure. Now, eventually, they showed who it was going to be, and they started putting stickers on towards once the actual line came out and was released. But he came in the traditional white Kenner mailer box, baggy, they used to include with all the toys, for those who may not have had them originally, a little booklet that would show you what was coming, what was out at the time, combinations of that. Well, this came with that and a piece of paper with a little story of who this guy was. Very similar to how the Boba Fett came and very similar to how with the Imperial Troop Transport, it was more like a booklet explaining, like a little story, like a little comic backstory on what this thing did. He had the pedigree of being the first mail away for The Empire Strikes Back after Boba Fett.
Right. Now, what's interesting is that by the time they card this figure, you can buy it with a card. Like, that's how I bought it. I never got the mail away for this one. The price jumped. Star Wars figures up to now were $1.99, which it's like science fiction these days, $1.99 for an action figure. they jumped to, oh my God, $2.49. So they went up about 50 cents, within, from Star Wars to Empire. And, I guess as the franchise got more popular and popular, the prices go up. And, I'm sure they were crying about the price of oil and the price of plastic and the price of shipping and this and that, just like they do now. But they got an extra 50 cents out of all of us because of that. The other interesting thing about this figure is that there were some minor variations. And as in the past, we talked about this. I'm not going to go into all the crazy variations, but there was just a slight, maybe a skin tone or skin shade color variations. No big deal. But what was cool about this figure is that they finally introduced a new gun. With Star Wars, you had about 3 guns that were being recycled left and right. And now here they throw you a new gun, which is a weird looking gun kit that he holds because of the fact of the shape of his arm. He really has very little elbow. They're not articulated. Obviously, these are 5-point articulations, but because his arm is so straight, he has to hold this gun that is very straight and it has the handle all the way up in the front. It's a bizarre design that was never repeated again, as far as I can tell, right?
No, he was the only guy with that gun. And it's weird when you see him because it's almost like his arms are slightly longer, I'd say, than the average figure. But, he is a reptilian type creature.
Yeah, he's an alien.
If I'm not mistaken, they eventually showed him as a climber and, various different things that his people can do.
He's a Trandoshan.
Well, that was before Caitlin made it popular.
But they've expanded on this figure on Clone Wars and Rebels, so I guess, we know more about him.
Yeah, that's the fun I'm trying to make here, that he basically was a weirder kind of alien figure, so it allowed him to have different features and, of course, the longer gun.
Right. Now, moving down the line, we have, I guess you could call it our first non-exclusive carded Empire figure. It's the Bespin Security Guard. Now, this... generally, as far as I'm concerned, it's a pretty bland figure. I remember the picture on the card didn't exactly match the figure's face. So he's kind of like a generic Bespin guy. Very plain. Variations are very limited. Maybe the size of his mustache, from what I understand, is the variation. Or the little gold highlights on his blue uniform. Some of them are very brightly highlighted and some of them are almost non-existent because it even wears away. A lot of people have pointed out that they just wear away. And again, this is it's a generic figure. He has a new gun, again, which is something that's interesting because this is a gun that resembles, as far as I'm concerned, the Rebel troop guns from the Rebel Blockade Runner, right?
Yeah, the blasters, they made it look like, I guess they give him a different kind of gun. I'm sure the guns in the universe were general type of weapons, but I think... watching the movie, they were using different type of weapons. You see,
they were much skinnier. I remember. Remember when they pulled the guns?
Weapons? Yeah, you
and
see
they're
them
skinny.
pull their
They're
weapons.
like Flash Gordon guns.
Yeah, and at this point, I think they tried to make it easy. The cool thing about this wave is I was able to acquire them all at the same time. I guess they came out. You're at the right place at the right time. I got all 9 because if you don't count Bosk,
right,
even though he is part of the carded wave, and I got him as the mailer, the rest of them I received all at the same time. So he was cool. The thing is about his packaging, like you said, and there are different variations, but I'm not sure if there was a variant of this particular one that's on the package. You see him, and he's got a nice beard, a nice full mustache and beard.
Yep,
where in
no beard
this
here.
case, where in this case he more has a handlebar mustache or I don't think it's quite a Fu Manchu, but
Well, that's the thing. Depending on the variation that you get, some are more Fu Manchu and some are more handlebar. It depends on how steady the guy who painted him, the 12-year-old who was painting these figures was, or how hungry he was.
Yeah, so that's pretty funny. It was a nice figure because he's got a lot of detail. He looks nice uniform, and it's just nice to have him.
The interesting thing is also that we're dealing with a new movie. We're dealing with a sequel now. So we have some knowledge on our head of what we're dealing with. But the anticipation and just the kind of putting it together of, you see the picture on the bubble and you're like, who the hell is this guy? Is he important? Is he related to somebody? Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? You don't know jack squat about some of these figures because unless they're telling you Imperial blah, 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 you have no idea, what side they're on.
Well, I definitely received these figures. I would say I got them... Now, I hope I'm accurate. I feel like I got them in April of 1980, which was about less than a month from when it was coming out. But towards the end of April, I received them all at once. And I didn't see the movie, it turns out, because it was still a limited type of release compared to the way movies are now. And there wasn't such a mass amount of theaters everywhere like there are now. So I wound up not seeing Empire till, I guess it came out on May 21st. I saw it, I think, on June 20th of 1980. And I already had the figures for maybe 2 months or a little less than 2 months. So I didn't know everybody what they did. I had seen pictures. At this point, magazines had come out.
Yeah.
There was a little idea of what was going on, but there were no spoilers to the extent that we have now. Going into Empire, it was still pretty much a shock what was happening. I mean, even a month later, I don't feel like anybody told me, who was whose father, any of that kind of nonsense.
And in a way, the figures, the card backs on the figures, they were our way of kind of trying to piece together a story. Because again, like you said, no internet, very little leaks out there. So what do you have to go on? Some magazine pictures here or there, the pictures on the cards. Again, you're trying to put things together. Up next, you have FX7, a completely, not only new character, but a complete new body sculpt. It's a droid that's kind of like a cylinder. It looks like a cylinder refrigerator almost, which was like, wow, what the heck is this thing? It was such a cool looking, different kind of figure. Not much history behind them. I don't even know if you knew that he was a good guy at the time or not. The only variation I'm aware of is that the red bulb eye that he has, some of them are a little orange apparently. So no big deal. But this guy has these arms that stick out and this like a pincher thing that can kind of grab things and his head pops up and down. For a very limited, playability figure, it was really cool in terms of how much detail they put into him.
I like him. I think he's cool. He stood up very easily. There was no problem. There was no problem of him being able, but it made it tough for him to fly the TIE Fighter.
To fly him. It made him tough to get in it.
No, I'm being silly, but he was a cool figure. I imagine many kids probably busted some of those arms from time to time.
Yeah, those were very fragile, I remember.
I very rarely ever touched my figures. In the beginning, I was opening them, but I very rarely did stuff with them by the time of Empire. And so all my figures are in great shape, but I'm just saying mine are good. But I imagine that was a problem because if you popped it out, you could eventually probably break some of it and they wouldn't pop back in if that's what you were doing.
Well, for people who are rebuilding their collection like I have in the past, you can still find these. If you go to one of those bins, like they call them the beater bins, where they have the figures that have seen some serious action, you can still find quite a number of these FX7s with all its arms still there, at a reasonable price. You can probably get them for like $8 or $10, loose.
He's not like one of the most famous characters, so that's why I imagine he's pretty easy to get.
Yeah. Up next, we have Han Solo in his Hoth battle gear, if you will, which he's wearing that snow blue-colored parka kind of outfit. Variations for this figure include basically the shading of the legs. Some of them are more tan, some of them are more brown, light, or darker. Again, no big deal. No, not worth going crazy looking for them.
To me, this is one of the greatest figures ever. This is one of the best ones of my collection. And if you look at his holster, you could pop in his gun, the little, I guess where the cartridge would go in the gun.
Yeah.
You can pop that in there as if his gun is holstered and then easily pop it out. I love this guy. And to me, I don't care, but he's wearing blue. That's what I say. If the figure hasn't wearing blue, he's wearing blue.
Yeah, again, this is one of those figures that I remember when I saw the picture and I'm like, oh my God, that looks like Han Solo, but he's in the snow. It looks like he's in the middle of a snowstorm or something because I think he's riding a tauntaun, but you don't see the tauntaun. You kind of see him kind of holding his goggle up or something like that. And it was just such a cool picture.
The tauntaun is obscured by where the figure is, but you get an idea that he's sitting on something with reins.
And yeah, like I said, it was such a cool picture. His arm is slightly bent because he's got that, that fast draw action kind of. Yeah. So he's all, he's ready for action. And again, your imagination would be going completely nuts trying to figure out what are our heroes doing in a snowstorm? What can they possibly be doing? Not a very hard to find figure. Like you said, the blaster, it uses the old Star Wars traditional Han Solo type blaster, which is cool because Han Solo always has the same blaster if you think about it.
Yeah, even in the new movies, he's still carrying the same gun.
That's right. Up next, another really cool figure, great design, IG-88. A very underused character in the movie. You see him in the background, barely moves, it has almost no articulation because it was, I guess, a puppet, an animatronic or something. But the figure was really cool because he was tall, very skinny, and they gave him a cool new gun that we hadn't seen before. It's a very long rifle with only one handle on it. That's important because later on we have a similar one coming up. But this is an instance where, again, they created a new gun. He's holding two of them. He's holding that new one, and he's holding the traditional Stormtrooper blaster that we've seen in Star Wars. What did you think of IG-88?
Again, these bounty hunters were great figures. They were cool. They were mysterious because we hadn't seen the movie yet. And I like this guy. You know, he doesn't have, again, these figures didn't have a lot of action, but he seemed like he was ready for action. And I'm glad we learned more about what these guys can do in the Clone Wars from some of their the IG-86 droid.
Right, the history of the line, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we ever got to the IG-88s in the Clone Wars, but it's a cool figure to have, and I like that we eventually were able to line up all of our bounty hunters.
Yeah. Variations for this one, very little, slight color tint differences. Again, as far as I'm concerned, not worth going crazy over. This is a figure you can also find in the beater box. Just make sure that, all the pieces are there because it is very skinny, and it tends, sometimes they tend to break the skinnier they are, the little pieces. So not a very difficult one to find. And another variation that I noticed that some people, believe it or not, look for is the tinting of the weapons. Sometimes the weapons are more black or more bluish. Again, it's not my bag, baby, but
yeah, I recall,
it does exist.
I don't know because I haven't looked at them closely, but sometimes the initial wave would be in a different sort of color. Like, if I'm not mistaken, like in the early days, we talked about maybe Chewbacca's gun was greenish, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So I think in this case, they had a bluish tint to them, but then eventually they became, I guess, just black.
Right. And sometimes it also depends on where they were manufactured. If they were manufactured in a certain factory in a certain country, the colors, they're sometimes a little off. Like, for example, if you're really a hardcore collector and you collect the Little Letty line, which is the Mexican line, yeah, the skin tones are different. The clothing are different. The cloth, a lot of things are different shades because it's just different manufacturing supplies. The American side is usually pretty steady, but like you said, yeah, sometimes they look a little greener, sometimes they look a little blacker or bluer, and some people they do look for those variations, and it's a very hot thing. The other important thing that a lot of people are a little crazy over is the repros. Some people like to remanufacture the guns, reproduce them with 3D printers and all types of stuff like that. And, it upsets a lot of people when they buy a figure, a used figure with a weapon, and all of a sudden they realize that the weapon is not original. It's a remanufactured weapon. There's all kinds of weird tests. There's a thing about you put them in water, and if they sink, they're either real or fake and stuff like that. So there's all kinds of little rules that you can figure out whether you're dealing with repro weapons or real weapons. But that's for another show.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about all of that. Obviously, having an original collection when they came out and still having them, I guess it bugs me that people would be making reproduction stuff.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I guess it's nice that somebody can get get a replacement or something for what,
We talked about this before.
Not the end of the world, because a real collector with a real sealed collection is going to be able to sell his stuff for the correct amount, because there are people that know what to look for and you can't fake it. So a guy who comes across trying to sell you something that's too good to be true, it probably is, as we've said. And a guy who buys something, he's not quite sure, well, let the buyer beware.
And we talked about this before. Not only weapons, but also capes. Capes are easily reproduced. You can't find yourself a Jawa cape or a Princess Leia cape or a Darth Vader cape in good shape. They make them again, and you can buy them. And my whole view is I have absolutely no problem whatsoever with reproductions as long as they're being honest about it. Don't sell something
I guess you're
that
right
is
about
not
that, exactly.
real. If you can't afford a real Jawa with a vinyl cape, at least you can pay $3 or $4 and get yourself a reproduction cape, and then you might be happy. Like I am happy with my reproduced cape, and I have my vinyl Jawa, which is homemade more or less. I guess somebody made it at home, but don't lie to somebody and tell them this is worth $3,000 when it's not. That's my rule. Speaking of capes and speaking of weapons, our next one is the Imperial Stormtrooper, better known as the Snowtrooper. An excellent, excellent looking figure. And again, one of these carded figures that when you saw the picture of the Snowtrooper holding the gun, aiming at you, you're like, oh my God, it's like a Stormtrooper, but it's like different and it's like so cool looking. And, what is that about? And all that stuff. He comes with a gun that's a brand new gun, similar to the IG-88 gun that we just mentioned before, except it has two handles, a front and a back handle, which is supposed to be kind of like a heavier assault rifle kind of weapon, I guess. Even though in the movie they're holding smaller blasters at the time.
Yeah, I love this figure, and as much as we know about him and see him, he's really underused.
Oh, yeah.
If you watch the movie, there's some inside jokes from people. They attack the rebel base. There's an explosion. Two guys run in, and then Vader marches in, and then other troops assemble. Well, during the filming of the movie, it seemed that on various takes, the initial two guys, because you can't see out of these helmets, and they're on a set with a lot going on and noise and lights and white, and they would fall, and then eventually Vader would trip, so they had to do multiple takes of this thing. And it's just a funny story to read. I found that out, I guess, in the making of The Empire Strikes Back. I think it was Alan Arnold or something. That was released. It was like a journal of the making of the movie. And it's just a funny little thing that these guys, they're menacing, but,
Oh, yeah. Not only that, but one of the most notorious deleted scenes from Empire is when the C-3PO rips off the sign that says Danger Wampas or something from a door, and the snowtroopers go in there not knowing what's in there, and they all get mauled, apparently, by a couple of Wampas that were caught. So that's cool. Now, the figure, what's cool about it, and we mentioned also about the cape variations, the costume has him wearing like this little, I guess you call him like a half skirt or something. They did that on vinyl also, which you attach it, which was, again, also very fragile because you had to kind of get it in the waist, and it's only half the waist.
Yeah, if you play with your figures, he has there's like a little hook, a little plastic hook that it hooks onto around his waist, and that's how to continue that longer, I don't even know what he needs that for, but it's a cool little part of the outfit.
I think for story purposes, it's supposed to keep him warmer than if he wasn't wearing it because he's wearing, cold weather gear.
Yeah.
The variations that I'm aware of, again, very minimal. A lot of them have to do with the eyes. Some of them have eyes that are smaller or bigger, and some of them have eyes that apparently actually connect. They actually have a very slight connection between the two eyes, which, again, if I were to run into something like that, I might pick it up as long as it's only like $5 or something, but I wouldn't go crazy over it. This figure also suffers from the same problem that the traditional stormtroopers suffer from, and that is with time and with sunlight, the arms start to change color than the body. So the arms start to turn a little more yellow, and the body kind of stays more in the white side because, like, the body is more, I guess, plasticky, and the arms are more rubbery. So they do have a change in color, I guess, as time goes on. But again, one of my favorite Empire figures because it was such a mysterious looking, cool figure. Almost like a Boba Fett as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Up next, we have Lando Calrissian, a new character. Oh my God, who could he be? What could he possibly be all about? This is a character, again, it came with this new generic blaster that the Bespin security guard came with. The variations that I believe came with Lando include the most noticeable ones. There's a Lando that you could actually see the white of his eyes and the white of his teeth. And then you have a Lando that you cannot see the white of his eyes or the white of his teeth. And that is the most noticeable one.
Yeah, I have the one that you don't see the teeth.
Okay.
I like the figure. I knew who Billy D. Williams was from movies. He was huge in the 70s. So for him to be in the Star Wars movie, that was pretty cool. And I like the figure. Of course, they use the vinyl cape, but the rest of the outfit is pretty nice. And
it's a smaller vinyl cape. It's not all, it doesn't go all the way to the floor. It kind of goes a little higher because he doesn't wear a flowing robe. He wears a short cape.
It conveys that velvet velour look of his shirt.
Unfortunately, the cape doesn't have, from what I remember, the cape had two shades. It had a shade on the outside, and I believe it had a different shade on the inside. But for the figure, they could only do one shade.
Yeah, they kept it kind of grayish, a bluish gray.
Yeah. And he is, like I said, he is part of this 31 back line.
But the teeth thing, I don't know how I feel about that. I almost think by showing his teeth, it makes it look a little like cartoonish or something like that. I don't know what.
Yeah,
I don't know whose idea that was.
It sticks out a little too much.
Yeah, I don't care for the one with the teeth. I don't have that one. I wouldn't go looking for it. Maybe, as you said, for your loose collection, you get if you find it in the junk bin or somebody's offering it or you had it. Yeah, sure. But I'm not going out of my way.
Yeah, like I said, that is the most noticeable variant. But there are other variants that include the head mold. Some heads are a little more longer than others. Some of them, the belt looks a little different. But the white of the teeth eye thing is the most noticeable variation on that one. Okay, up next we have Luke Skywalker, Bespin fatigue.
Another one of my all-time favorite figures.
Now, here's what's important about this figure. Not only the fact that it's your first Luke, of Empire. He's wearing stuff that you're kind of like, whoa, what is all, what kind of weird costume is he wearing now? It's all one color. It's not the white costume anymore he wore before. But the main thing is that they officially dropped doing the lightsaber inside the arm, the telescoping lightsaber.
Which is very smart.
To a lightsaber that he can actually hold.
This is a nice version. And then you could wind up using this with the X-Wing fighter pilot figure and stuff. They do continue to make the same mistake, though, and make it yellow.
They made it yellow, yeah.
I'm sure they did it with the continuity of the yellow lightsaber from the first movie. At that point in the line, they had made some changes to some figures. I'm actually surprised they didn't give Luke the proper blue lightsaber, the telescoping blue lightsaber that Ben has.
Right.
But in this case, it is yellow. And so, okay, so you have that. That's fine. And it's a pretty cool feature. And he also looks like his lightsaber is hanging on him. So when it's not exposed, I guess you have that look. And he comes with a gun that he actually never fires in the whole movie. Right.
And what James means by the lightsaber hanging is it molded into his belt. They do have a lightsaber hilt. It's all black. So it's not that detailed. Some people might not be able to tell what it is, but we can tell that it's the lightsaber on one side of the belt and the gun holster on the other side of the belt. So he does have that in case he's not holding it. You can kind of say, oh, he's just, it's just hanging off his belt. He also comes with the blaster that his X-Wing pilot figure used from Star Wars, the traditional Han Solo style blaster. And the most noticeable variations that I'm aware of is his hair color. Most of them are yellowish color, blonde, but you do find a couple of brown ones here or there that are a little harder to find.
And his hair was darker in this movie, so probably the darker hair is more realistic.
Right, especially in Dagobah when he's fighting in Dagobah, when he's doing all the training and stuff like that.
I like the idea of Luke having the blonde hair still for that kind of continuity. But when he first came out, the initial packaging showed a more full body pose. And then later on, they show more of a close-up of him, like, shooting, look like he's going to shoot at you or something like that.
Yeah. They did do some modifications to it. And again, a great figure. Like you said before, you can use them in an X-Wing. You could later on when you have the Dagobah playset, it's perfect for that playset. Like, unfortunately, they never made one with him without the jacket off. You can actually see his arms. I've seen a lot of people who do the custom figures. I'm into the custom figures, and they do. They take the legs and they take part of the body, and then they substitute the arms with different arms to kind of modify them.
So it looks like he's got like a sleeveless exercise outfit or
something. Right, he's wearing like a sleeveless shirt. Right, exactly. This is another one of these great figures that,
I love this figure. I wanted this outfit. So, this is way years before cosplay. And the fan club or something of the era.
Starlog magazine. Or the Star Wars fan club. Yeah,
I think it was a fan club. They maybe Bantha Track still, if they had I don't think they upgraded to the actual magazine inside or anything. You could buy it for, I'm going to say, let's say $40. Now, I could be mistaken. It could have been a little more, but $40 in 1980 money is a lot of friggin' money. And it was enough that I was getting all the toys. My father and mother were very generous, and I was very lucky that for a while they were bankrolling 2 lines of toys because my brother had to have everything, and eventually I guess he moved on to other stuff, and I kept going with the Star Wars figures. But I wanted this jacket so bad. And my mother was trying to say, what are you going to do with that? You're going to outgrow it, blah, blah, blah. And all of that is true. It's just one of those, white whales that I never got.
I know exactly what you mean. The next figure we have is Princess Leia, but this is Princess Leia in the Bespin gown. Now, this is a figure that has the most that I could think of, at least
steeped in
that
controversy.
are noticeable variations. And let me go through them very quickly, the most noticeable ones. I would say there's 3 different ones. There's the Leia that you could see her neck and it's flesh colored. Okay. Then there's a Leia whose neck is gold color because for some reason they took the gold accent that is supposed to only have like a little trim and they painted the entire neck that color.
Like she's got a gold turtleneck.
Like she's got a gold turtleneck, exactly. And then you have the Leia that looks like she has a red turtleneck because they continue to paint the red of the dress through the accent, through the neck. So you have 3 different neck variations of all things in the world.
Poor quality control.
Now, not only that, but this is something I never noticed or I never looked for. The sleeves. When the sleeve meets the hand, some of them have a straight line that the sleeve ends and the hand begins. And some of them have like a triangular thing that is supposed to be like a dress thing, with women's dresses that the sleeve kind of goes into one of your fingers, the middle finger, for example, and it creates a triangle. That is something I've never noticed that now I'm going to start looking at my figures and going, well, do I have any of those?
That's way too complicated for me, but I did have the initial one that showed her. It's almost like a side pose or something like that, a longer body pose. I have the one that properly shows her neck.
Flesh colored?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not screwed up or anything like that. And I was actually surprised years later reading that there was so much going on with this figure because it just seemed, my stuff just seems so normal. All these variants and teeth and fuzzy hair.
Yeah, you never knew they existed. That's the thing. You never knew it because you only usually have one.
Yeah, I have it. When I got it, I didn't feel like I cared about, later releases and stuff like that. So I guess I'm lucky I have the more accepted correct one. And that's that.
Now, she also comes with the traditional Leia blaster, which is that skinny blaster that...
Yeah, they kept that continuity.
It's not very accurate if you think about it. Even for Star Wars, it wasn't very accurate, but I guess they had to give her a skinny thing because that's what she shoots.
That skinny gun was close to what she used on the Tantive 4, on the Blockade Runner.
A little bit.
But
in Bespin, she never shoots that.
She never had those guns. She was using a blaster.
And she wasn't even wearing that costume by the time she's using a blaster. So in theory, this figure should have came with no weapon at all because it never has a weapon.
In hindsight, isn't it interesting? They made her go change her clothes from when they captured her at dinner to back to her snowsuit. It's interesting. They took that time to say, hey, maybe you want to get more comfortable and wear your more.
Get back into your rebel costume, you rebel scum. What's also interesting about this figure is that it has a cape. And for the first time, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the cape has 2 different patterns.
Yeah,
we were complaining before about Lando not getting his pattern.
Yeah.
This one has a different pattern on each side.
The outside is actually pretty well ornamented. And the inside is pinkish. So they made a little effort here on doing a nice job on her.
Like a print. It has a certain print.
Yeah, and it is a nice figure.
And now our final figure for the 31 backs is the Rebel Soldier in Hoth gear. Now, remember, the picture they showed you on the card, I remember it was a Rebel Soldier with, I think he has one of those radar dishes behind him and he's like ready to fire or something.
Yeah.
Generic guy, cool looking figure. But I remember at the time, because when you compare it to the card, he didn't have that Rebel backpack attached to him that was so cool that we got later as an accessory or as a secondary figure.
You had to mail away for that survival kit a little bit later.
Still, he's pretty cool. He kind of has the colors. The colors don't exactly match the picture. The picture he's wearing more of a light colors.
Yeah, and there's some tan in it, but this one made it seem like it was like fully brown, and it was
very brown against the tan. He's holding the blaster that we mentioned earlier from the Bespin security guard, generic blaster, basically. It's like, okay, that's fine.
Here's the deal with this one, and I'm actually surprised. I'm not surprised because he's a main character, but I am a little surprised in the way companies tend to cheap out.
Yeah.
This is basically a similar figure to what a Hoth Luke would be.
Yeah.
You could use him at the time as Hoth Luke, and also as a trooper, providing they don't all get confused. Hey, which one of you is Luke?
Right. Until you're waiting for them to release a Luke, this was the substitute for Luke. You put him on top of your Tauntaun or whatever,
The Luke didn't come out for quite a while, and obviously there are differences, and it's easy to tell when they're near each other. There are differences in the outfits, but this was nice to at least have at the time.
And this is the first time that you actually have a Rebel trooper that you can troop build the same way that you were originally troop building with stormtroopers. So now you can buy multiples of these and have your Rebel army, if you will, to be able to do, your setups when you line up your action figures in your room.
And I did buy extra figures of these like I did with stormtroopers, snowtroopers, couple Tusken Raiders, couple Jawas. I guess it depended on how much you were playing with your figures. And by this time, I really wasn't. I was more of a collector. But it was nice to have multiples. Since I opened them, I could display them as it wasn't just like, hey, one guy sitting there.
Yeah. Yeah. The only variations that I can see from this particular figure is, again, how brown the coat that he's wearing is. Some are browner, some are lighter. But also one more thing that's another type of variation that pops up every now and then, especially with light skin characters like Han Solo or this particular character, is the flesh tones. With this figure, some of them are more pinkish and some of them are more tannish in terms of the actual tint of the flesh. That's something that I never noticed before.
Well, they were Norwegian actors. Come on, Carlos. They're very light-skinned in Norway.
Yeah, the blood, makes your skin kind of be translucent, I guess, because it's so cold up there.
This was the last of the initial wave for The Empire Strikes Back, and he's a pretty cool figure.
Yeah, it is. And like I mentioned earlier, this wraps up the 31 back part of our collection here. As you notice, there's a lot of characters missing, but remember,
we're not even halfway through the whole line at this point.
No. But again, they do this on purpose because they don't want to show you all the characters. They don't want to give you all the characters, first of all. Sometimes they don't even want to show you certain characters because they're a surprise. They want you to be surprised and go see the movie, and then you start talking about it. They did it with The Return of the Jedi also. They played some shenanigans where they didn't want you to see certain figures. And here in Empire Strikes Back, they kind of did a similar thing. When we do our next show, when we continue, with the different waves of Empire Strikes Back figures, you're going to see some big iconic characters show up. Some characters that, similar to earlier on, are introduced not in a card back manner, but some of them are introduced as mail-aways, some are introduced as play sets and stuff like that. Because you got to remember, the line is getting huge. The amount of figures compared to Star Wars is different.
Yeah, this line is huge at this point. Now, it is one of the biggest toy lines at this point in terms of money making. Maybe not in terms of the amount of material that is offered. Obviously, things like Barbie and G.I. Joe and various other ones are still bigger. But the demand is still huge, the excitement. So I guess at this point, this is what we would consider the pinnacle. That by this point, there's no question that this line is going for a while.
Yeah. And we are going to, as I said before, follow up on this. We're going to continue it, and we're going to take it all the way through Jedi, and we'll see what happens after that. So I want to thank James, first of all, for joining me today. And I want to thank you guys for continuing to listen to our shows. And we will see you next time at GeekFest Rants. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Cloud City.
From Kenner's Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back collection, action figures R2-D2, new Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia, each sold separately. And here's action figures Boba Fett, Darth Vader, and new IG-88.
They can't escape us. I'll get the bounty. No, Bob, I will. You've got your mission, man. Now, move out.
IG-88, Boss, Lando Calrissian, and other action figures each sold separately. From Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back collection, new from Kenner.
It's not my bag, baby.
Oh.
Most people find that as a compliment.
Thank you. I'm your most humble servant.